Our recruiters field a lot of questions every single day. On this episode, we talk about new traveler questions and contract questions, which seem to come up usually within the first couple of phone calls anyway, especially from new travelers. So if you are a new traveler or you're considering this for the first time, this is the episode you're going to want to listen to or watch with Adam Collette. Atlas All Access starts now. All right. So three-part episode.
Three parts.
First part, new traveler questions and contract questions.
Okay.
Part 2, next week, will be about pay, benefits, and then questions about vendors, MSPs, VMSs, that type of thing. And then part 3 will be with Cassie Welford from Compliance, all about compliance.
Great.
And I know we've talked about these before, but it's just a good refresher to get back into it again.
Yep.
And especially when we put this question out to our recruiter group and said, what questions are you hearing over and over and over again?
Sure.
Do you field on each one of these calls? I know you responded to that. You probably fielded a lot of these too. So here's what we're going to do. I've got just a list of questions. I'm going to go down. Give me just a quick on each one of them, right?
Sure.
All right. So how long does it take to become a travel nurse?
How long does it take to become a travel nurse? The minimum qualifications that I think are out there is 1 year of experience in a specific specialty on there. Obviously, have at least your associate's degree from a accredited school.
Yep.
On there, depending on your specialty. Obviously, BLS is required for everything. ACLS for higher units, PALS, whatever.
Yep.
For those. So. I would say a year of experience, accredited college, and the correct certifications would be probably the best start.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's minimum, right?
That's minimum.
There's a whole bunch of alarm bells going off, I'm sure, in certain Facebook groups, and you know who you are. Oh my gosh, you need more than a year. You might.
Absolutely. Might. I would recommend, 2.5 probably is the best.
Absolutely.
That you've seen most situations and drugs and those kind of things. But
absolutely,
we're talking about minimums. There you go.
Okay. Next question. How quickly, and I assume this is once I accept a contract, how quickly can I start?
Sure. I would say that it's about 2 weeks from time of acceptance to when you can start on there. Between, doing the testing, doing the compliance requirements, those kind of things. 2 weeks is a pretty quick start on there. And even
that's a quick start.
It really is. It's a quick turnaround, especially for you to get everything done and then travel, depending on how far that might be on there.
Yep.
I would say typically it's about 3 weeks is typically what I feel comfortable, especially for a brand new traveler on their first assignment. 3 weeks is probably good. The other thing is, does the hospital only do orientation every 2 weeks, once a month? It's going to depend on the facility of what works on there, but 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, is typically normal on there.
Okay. What can I do, not me, but what can I do, the traveler do, to help the process and get a good travel job faster?
Sure. I would say to get your first travel job faster is to have a larger radius of what you're able to look at. If you have one single spot, I only want to go to Phoenix, I only want to work days, and I only want to have, the more requirements or the more things that you have as needed for that assignment, the harder it's going to be.
Right.
The more you open up to, hey, I'm okay with, 5 hours from my home versus 1 hour from my home, you're going to open up those opportunities. Grant, I always tell people, open for your first one, be super open of what the possibilities might be. And then once you have that first travel assignment under your belt, then you can get more specific and more detailed of what you're looking for. But at the end of the day, you, the traveler, are going to make those decisions. It's not my decision. It's not Atlas's decision, your company's decision. You get to make those decisions. So I think the frustrations that I see on Facebook groups or other travelers that I talk to is, hey, I want this, this, and this, and I can't get it. And it's like, you've just listed 4 of the hardest reasons of to get a travel position on there.
Right.
So
that's like a level 2 conversation, I think, that you have with with your recruiter too. Is once you get to that point, and maybe you aren't necessarily getting the feedback from jobs that you were presented to in the first place.
Yep.
Maybe you need to have that second level conversation, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I think that's important. Okay. Next question. If I have a problem, and this is a legit question because you're picking up and leaving, right? You're picking up and you're going wherever. If I have a problem on the job, who do I call?
Sure.
Who do I talk to?
Yeah. My answer as a recruiter is you first need to go talk to your supervisor on the floor and in a nice, calm, non-demeaning way, have a positive conversation with the manager first. They are there. They're the one that can directly affect the situation or help change or maybe help you understand that. You can definitely you should call your recruiter first or second in there. Or maybe if you don't feel comfortable, call your recruiter and come up with a plan of what you need to do or who you need to talk to on there. But you may work for Atlas MedStaff, but you are still a nurse for that employer or that hospital. They need to be aware of those things that are going wrong too. They might be able to help out a lot faster than I am. Jumping through the hoops to get some information for you.
But working in tandem with, I think you're 100% right. You talk to the person that you're closest to, whether that's your supervisor, the house supervisor, your nurse manager, whoever that is.
Yep.
You talk to that person first.
Yep.
Then you loop your recruiter in.
Yep.
And then the recruiter here would loop in a client manager, and then if necessary, right, if it goes to those levels or whatever.
Absolutely.
Just understand that there is a system in place to support you while you're on a contract. You're not just on an island.
100%.
Right.
100%.
I love this question so much. How do I know my recruiter or my agency isn't screwing me?
Yeah, honestly, this is probably the hardest thing, especially for a new traveler. You know, obviously, once you've done a couple assignments and built that trust or built that relationship with that recruiter or that company, it becomes a lot easier. But the hard answer to this is there are so many things that go on behind the scenes with bill rates and changing bill rates and critical needs, and it was a critical need last week and now it's not a critical need this week, or we submitted you at a rate but it took 2 weeks to interview and now that rate isn't valid. There's just so much that goes behind the scenes, and being able to have a recruiter that can explain to you of those things that happen. It happens so much that
It happens within a blink of an email, right?
It really does.
Client manager gets an email, this isn't critical anymore.
Yep.
You don't get the increased rate or whatever. And the job that you pitched 10 minutes ago now doesn't get that increased rate anymore when you submit in an hour or whatever that might be.
Yep. And the thing that really stinks is, you place somebody and it takes that 3 weeks, as we talked about, for them to get there. And, they're on a regular rate, and then, all of a sudden something happens at the hospital between there, and now they're really in desperate need.
Yep.
And now the rate's $10 higher to try to get more profiles in there to fill jobs. And, we can even go back and ask can we have that same rate on there? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be no. You signed the contract, 3 weeks ago, and it is what it is. And there's a lot of times, so you're going to be working with somebody that's making more money than you, and no, your company didn't screw you over like that.
Had no effect on that whatsoever.
No intentions.
I think,
and then the double-edged sword to that is, there's recruiters out there taking really high deals for themselves and their companies, and and people will ask me, hey, am I, is this bad? And it's just like, I don't have all of the information. I wasn't paying attention to it of that job, of when the rate changed or how it happened, what rates you're on, or anything like that. So,
Right.
At that point in time, it's start asking questions and seeing if you can find out a bill rate. So then we can really figure out what that means.
Well, I think there's a trust. You touched on it. There's a trust factor involved, and I think the best way to do that is you all work with a traveler somewhere, right?
Yep.
Talk to them about the experiences that they've had. Most of them have a recruiter that they trust.
Yep.
Most of them do. Whether it's here or someplace else, there are a lot of good recruiters and a lot of good companies out there, right? There's a lot of companies that just started last year or last week or last month or whatever.
Yep.
That for one reason or another, right, have to do what they've got to do.
Yeah.
And you may not get that same sort of trust level out of them, right?
Yeah.
So follow your gut, follow the advice of your fellow traveler, of your fellow nurses, right? Your fellow travelers,
Yeah.
the people that you work next to 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And
And I would also encourage people to not be quick to jump and say, hey, my company's screwing me over. Call your recruiter, text your recruiter, have that honest conversation of, hey, I know other travelers are making more money here. Can you explain to me where this deal was, or are you making a ton of money on this, or whatever? At the end of the day, the traveler's got to make some money. The company's got to make some money as well.
Yep.
And there's a happy medium in there.
that's a legit conversation to have, too. That's an absolute legit conversation to have.
And if your recruiter won't share that information with you, I don't know if that's somebody that I would trust. Granted, they might not be able to give you all of the information, share the bill rate or whatever. I completely understand that. But if they're not willing to at least have that conversation with you, I would be questioning if that's a recruiter I would want to work with.
True. Okay. Do I have to find my own housing?
You don't have to. This is a slippery slope with some companies on there. I think the bigger companies that you have, they have a huge housing department with people dedicated to do that. Some companies don't have that as well. In my personal opinion, I think housing is one of the hardest things as a recruiter to do, just in the sense of they don't know, or I don't know where you, the traveler, feels comfortable staying on there. And so what I hate seeing is my company set up housing and it's disgusting, or it's this and it's that. And it's just like, we're in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know what parts of Houston are the good parts, the bad parts. It's close to the hospital. You wanted to be close to the hospital.
Right.
And then we're in a situation where, we're out of some money for doing the down payments and those kind of things. Which is not a bad thing. It happens.
Sure.
It's totally fair. But in the same sense, I think it's important for you to feel comfortable as a traveler. And I think when you and I work together, at least in my opinion, you and I working together to find something that's going to work, it usually works out better than me just finding something and expecting you to show up and like it and be okay with it. Mm-hmm. It's one of the hardest things. I will tell new travelers, my best piece of advice is book a long-term extended stay for the first 4 or 5 days that you're there. Go to orientation, talk to people that are there. Where are you staying? Did your company do it? Did you do it? At night, go grab a sandwich and just drive around and look for places to rent. Look at the hospital board of, usually obviously college students are there or whatever. And so there's typically a board in every hospital where there's, tags to pull off for rooms to rent or places to stay.
Yep.
Get there, feel comfortable where you're at. And I think you're going to have a lot better than sight unseen signing up for something on there as well.
I think that might be the best piece of advice you've given so far is take a couple of days, stay at a long, like an extended stay or whatever, a long-term or whatever, and then figure out where you need to be.
Correct.
All right, last question under new traveler questions, and this could actually be a current traveler question as well. And this is one I just had a conversation with a former Atlas traveler who isn't traveling with us any longer. I'm not even sure if he's traveling, quite honestly, anymore. It looks like Atlas does more gifts and special things like Atlas Adventures, trips, than other agencies. Does everyone get that somehow, and does that stuff come out of my paycheck?
Sure. The easiest way that I think I can explain it to you is if you go back to McDonald's, Burger King, whatever, they have a marketing budget that comes from their profits. Every time you buy a cheeseburger, a penny goes to their marketing team or whatever that might be on their side. Atlas is doing nothing differently on there. We are obviously taking money from our profits and redistributing them back to obviously the travelers on there. So if you want to say that does it directly come out of my paycheck or not? Yeah, I guess you can say that.
Well, because it all comes to bill rate, right?
It all comes to the bill rate.
We don't sell anything else. Right.
And so, yeah, there is a profit line that we make off of every contract, and then that comes out of those Atlas Adventures, those random acts of kindness, birthdays, those kind of things come out of our marketing budget, just as any other company has a marketing budget.
But it comes out of the Atlas side rather than out of the traveler side.
Exactly. 100% on there. So you can look at it any way. You can say we're doing it, we're not doing it, whatever. That we're not going to fight you on that. Everybody's going to try to turn it a different way. Yep. But at the end of the day, I think everybody needs to feel appreciated, feel special. And if your company's, once again, how do you not build trust of doing some nice things, some things for travelers on a monthly or assignment basis?
Well, just appreciation for what they do, for leaving your house and going out and and doing this. And part of the fun, and sure, traveling is about making money and whatever, but seeing the country and having a good time and us living vicariously through that, right? I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
You can't.
Nope.
But I can live vicariously through your adventures.
Correct.
And this helps.
Yep.
I would gladly pay this out of this side.
100%.
All right. So contract questions. We'll run down these really quick because they all kind of seem to have the same sort of thing. And keep in mind, there are some that deal with taxes here.
Yep.
And we're not tax advisors. I am not that whatsoever.
I don't like doing my own taxes.
Exactly. I give mine to an accountant, and he does it for me,
yes,
right?
Correct.
So, okay. This is an interesting one. Can I view a contract before I sign anything?
Yes.
Yeah. It comes to you unsigned.
Yeah.
So
correct.
Right.
You can interview, obviously, get your questions answered, but you can view a contract and then we can go back. I think the only thing on there is like you should know the location and the pay before you even submit to a job. So,
right.
Location and pay shouldn't be a question after when you're looking at a contract.
Exactly.
On there. But, if you pitched a ICU job and then it comes back and it's a neuro ICU job and you're not comfortable with that, that's a different question.
Absolutely.
You're going to know that.
And there are times during interviews that things change or whatever, but then there are also times that maybe all of the information wasn't included in the job description. Yep. And so unbeknownst to us, we submitted you to a job that maybe you either weren't qualified for or didn't want in the first place.
Yep.
Totally happens.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, before you sign or commit to a contract, I tell people we're not committed to anything until you sign that. But once we sign it and we tell the hospital that in good faith you're going to show up there, you're not committed to anything at that point.
Yep. Okay. Are all contracts 3 months, 13 weeks?
No, I would say the most common, and people ask, why 13 weeks? I think that's probably another common question. 13 weeks is 1 week of orientation, and then typically 3 months, 12 weeks of an assignment on there.
Yep.
And how that ever came up, I have no idea.
I heard the story once. I think Thomas Piper told me the story because he kind of researched back into the origins of travel nursing or contract nursing. He did a little bit of that. He researched it once. I don't remember what it was, though, honestly.
But the other common one would be 8 weeks. I would say 8 and 13 weeks are probably the most common, at least in us.
Yeah.
And then you get into like strike work and short-term contracts and 3 weeks this, 3 weeks that.
Those are tough. You got to know what you're doing on those.
And you have to have a full team. I have a lot of nurses, hey, can we do a strike work? And you have to have a whole another team. It's almost a whole nother business of people that can go out and do strike work. So it's something we choose at Atlas not to do at this point in time. So
here we go, IRS question. What is a permanent tax home?
Your permanent tax home would be where you are going to file your taxes legally in the United States of America.
Where you duplicate expenses.
Where you duplicate expenses.
Right. I think that might be the most important thing. If you're questioning this at all, right? Just Google duplicating expenses. As a contract worker, all contract workers do it, right? That's how you get per diems.
Plumbers, railroad workers,
dudes that climb the 5G towers and whatever. They're all on the road. They're all duplicating expenses. They pay rent, own a house, whatever, someplace else.
Correct.
And it's not just putting your stuff in your parents' garage.
Correct.
Unless you're paying them rent because that's where you lived and you didn't have your own apartment and you're still paying them rent. And you can prove to the IRS that you're still paying them rent.
Correct.
Okay.
It's got to be a money trail.
Yep. There are industry things from a business standpoint that I should watch out for with a contract. Are there industry things from a business standpoint that I should watch out for in a contract with an agency, such as what are good things to see in a contract? What are bad things to see in a contract? What are things that I can ask for that I may not know about?
Sure. I think you should watch for a minimum hourly wage. We have it set at a specific number at Atlas, but, an RN should not be making $10 an hour somewhere across the country. There's
you want to talk about red flags with the IRS?
Yeah, exactly. But what Atlas chooses that number to be isn't true across the board. It's what we've been advised to, and
we've talked to our CPAs, and they say this is acceptable.
Yep, correct on there. So a very low, under $15 an hour for an RN would be a huge red flag for me.
Yeah.
On there. Always know your guaranteed hours. I think guaranteed hours is probably a big thing on there.
And understand that guaranteed hours doesn't always mean guaranteed pay.
Correct. And understand, ask especially for new people, hey, what is guaranteed hours mean? What are call-off policies? If I do get called off, how does that affect my pay? If I get sick, how does that affect my pay?
Which we talked about last week, right?
Yep. On there as well. So there's so much information, and it maybe look like your recruiter or your company is hiding that from you, but maybe you just didn't have that conversation. But if you're interviewing recruiters and companies, how does guaranteed hours work and everything as well?
Those are all legitimate conversations to have ahead of time.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so a little long-winded, but I think that answered a ton of questions. Next week, we'll talk about pay, benefits, and then I know all of you have heard about vendors and VMS and MSPs. We've talked about them before. We'll cover them again, what each one of them are, how they operate, and how we interact with them when it comes to your contract.
Awesome.
Adam Collette will be back with us. We'll probably be in the same clothes. Maybe. See you next week.